session. And we're going to look at science safety today and how we close out the school year and prepare for 25-26 academic year. Yeah, we're already thinking ahead for next year. So we're going to take a look if you don't mind, join us in the chat. Put down who you are, say hello. I know many of you are friends. You're my friends, so thank you so much for coming and share out your school district and organization where you're from and what your role is. With me today is Rebecca Gorelli. She's going to assist me. And as we look through this, again, this topic of science safety, we are three that will be happening this spring. This is the first of the spring issue. Then we'll have one in May all about what is sense making in science. And then in June, we will be thinking about what do we need to share with our teachers as we kick off the new year? How do we help prepare them so that they have a successful 25-26 year? But for today, let's go ahead and take a look. I'll invite you to read what our goals are for our time together this morning. We want to make sure that as our students and teachers are figuring out the world around them in their science labs, in their STEM classes, in their science classes, whether we're talking about a kindergarten class or a high school class, that they stay safe. And as my colleagues at NSTA always say, we can never be completely safe, but we can be better than what we in our safety tomorrow than what we were yesterday, as we think about how we can really make sure we have everything in plan. But we can never be completely safe. But what can we do to make it the safest environment as we possibly can for our scholars and our teachers? So just as in past times, if you've joined us in the past, we have a digital resource collection. Rebecca put that link in there. We will have the PDF, the slides, and the recording by the end. It will be sent out to you, so you have all these resources. We're not going to go through every single one of these resources. There is a lot out there to help you as a teacher, as a school leader, as a principal, in being safe and getting those resources for your school. So let's think about these safety guidelines. Let's begin there. And I'd like you to take a look at, hopefully this isn't from your school or one of your classrooms, but in the chat, what safety hazards do you see in these two photos? Oh, Johanna, that look. Yes, these are from actual science classrooms. So you can go ahead and put in the chat, what safety hazards do you see? Ah, disorganized, yeah. Not very neat. Chemicals just sitting out in the open, yes. Dee Dee, thank you for talking about the cords and how they're hanging, right? They're just hanging off the thing or walk by. That fume hood, is it supposed to be doing an experiment there? Is there something going on, or is it just become like a storage and experiment place? And yeah, not sure if they have safety goggles on. Uh, yeah, so there's lots of things happening in these two pictures. that sometimes when we walk into our rooms, we might see something like this. And this is not what we want to see in our science classrooms or our STEM classrooms. And so really the whole thing about this today's session is really thinking about our duty of care and so that we provide safety instructions before each lab and we keep everyone safe. And under that duty of care, our liability, there are three main overarching responsibilities as science and STEM instructors and leaders of science and STEM. And the first one is the duty of maintenance. And when we think of duty of maintenance, it's that ensuring that safe environment that teachers have for themselves and for their students, making sure there's no, they're not using defective equipment, that they put in written reports if there is equipment that's defective, and getting work orders in. They're following all the safety guidelines based upon the labels of the materials that they're using. So that's one of the first categories, is the duty of maintenance. The next one is this inspection of safety. And when we think about the inspection of safety, again, it's making sure that those protocols are being followed. This is really key, that sometimes when we think about the inspection of safety, it's not just inspecting it, it's actually, have we taught safety? How, and before each lab, are we saying these are the concerns that we need to make sure that our students know, explaining the risk and making sure that they have all the safety guidelines they need and the proper protective wear that they need to use. And we follow that. And it's really important that this is that inspection of safety for our own personal sake, that it's put into lesson plans, that we actually have documentation that we have taught that safety, that the students know the protocols prior to doing the work. And then the duty of supervision, that's the enforcement of those protocols that we just taught, that you as an instructor shared. Are they, don't leave the classroom when there's a lab, that you have kept the chemical safety, your storage room locked. So that duty of supervision, making sure that the students keep their goggles on, right? Those are things. So those are the three main categories under this duty of care that we need to be aware of and that your teachers need to be aware of. But there's also two others when you think about the liability of safety. There's this negligence of just being careless, and then there's this recklessness of safety, that any piece of equipment is being used or something's being done and you knew that it was defective, but you still use it because it's got to get done. So that is recklessness. So those are two things that we never want any of our schools, our teachers, administrators, or our students to be into these areas of having this liability on them. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to think about our three legal standards for safety. And the first one, the legal standard, is sometimes is just called the lab standard, and it's from OSHA. And what it says is that, first of all, every school, not district, not just high school, we're talking about elementary schools through high school, need to have an employee that is that has been trained and qualified as your chemical hygiene officer. And you need to have a chemical hygiene plan. And we'll talk a little bit more of that. But that is the job of a person in each single school. If a school chooses not to um, have that title for a specific person in that school site to be that chemical hygiene officer, that responsibility lands on the superintendent. And the superintendent then is responsible for the chemical hygiene plan and everything that goes underneath that, under that OSHA standard. So something to make sure you have. The second one is known as the HAZCOM, and that's the communication standard of your hazard chemicals. And really it's about those data sheets, those safety data sheets that you get with the chemicals. Where are those? And we're even talking like about baking soda. If you get the baking soda, um, and vinegar and rubbing alcohol, when you're thinking about at the elementary level, they should have data sheets, chemical data, safety data sheets, SDS. So, and those need to be part of your safety protocols. And the last legal standard is from the National Fire Protection Association. And these are just strategies that minimize the effects of fire, smoke, toxic fumes, and thinking about where things are. Do you have those protection devices like the fire blanket, like the fire extinguisher to protect that? And it also brings in the occupant safety. How many students can be in a classroom, and that's more on that along with another code. So those are the three big legal standards. Two additional ones that I'd like to remind people about is the American National Standards Institute for Eye Protection. This sometimes we just think about, oh, we just need goggles for chemistry. No, now you'll need eye protection in physics and earth and space science in your elementary classrooms. Do you have the correct protective eyewear? And ANSI can help you determine what protective eyewear is best for which situations. And then the last one is our building officials and code administration. We know in Arizona and across the country that we have less teachers and bigger class sizes. Not so much classrooms, our classroom sizes are the actual same, but we have a lot more students coming into those classes. Oh, we can just put 32 students in a chemistry class. We can just have 34 students in a STEM class. Not not if it's based upon our building code. Um, and so just to let you know, that is for science labs and for shops and for STEM labs requires 50 net square feet per person. And so that you have to make sure what's your table space, what's your counters. And so your architect can look at that and help you with that along with your fire marshal to ensure that you have the right amount of space for the number of students in those classes. So just those are some resources. All of these are linked on that digital resource to help you think about the legalities of staying safe. There's some other great resources. These organizations all can provide guidance and helpful. And I'm going to share with you just our parent one. Ooh, I might, I apologize. The NSTA. You do not have to be a member of NSTA to get to this link, the National Science Teachers Association. But what I love about it, it has blogs. It has all these safety ideas about how to stay safe at the elementary, how to stay at secondary, what are those agreements when we're talking about, did we do those protocols? Have we taught kids how to be safe in science? There is an agreement form, sample agreement forms for each one that you need to have on file as a district. What about that eye protection? So, and how to have that hygiene plan, that chemical hygiene plan. So great resources here that are free and you don't even have to be a member. Also, there's a safety blog. You know, wow, what are we looking at this safety shower station? So different protocols for the, and different blog posts that are, again, great information, up to date. And then there's additional resources on this page. So take a look if you haven't. NSTA has a great number of resources for all levels of science. So we're going to really think about our STEM and facilities as we close out the year, because none of us want to be one of these statistics in where we are spending money on law fees because we did not do our duty of standards, of codes. So when we're looking for our checklist for the summer, what should we be looking at? We're going to take a look at what each of these mean a little bit further, but let's take a look, and we're going, I apologize, my link is just, slides are moving ahead before me. So in that instructional space, you saw pictures of that instructional space. You made comments. It wasn't clean. It was disorganized. There were things, the cords were dangling off. Yeah, so before the end of the year, and even during the school year, it should be neat and clean, aisles clean, nothing, no cords dangling off. I know storage is always an issue, but putting things up on top of cabinets, on top of cabinets, on top of stuff, when things, if you have to climb up to pull things down, then it's an issue. It's a safety issue. There should be at least 18 inches from the ceiling to the items that you're storing. You need to make sure that you have all the proper signage. At the end of the year, it's a great time to walk through the classrooms and say, do we have all the proper signage for our classrooms? And are all chemicals labeled, and are they locked and stored appropriately? And I'm going to really, lots of times at high school, we take care of those chemicals really, really well. That does not always happen at the lower levels. And I'm going to give an example. When I started middle school in a school district, I got there at the beginning of the year. I opened up my cabinet under one of my sinks, and there's all these chemicals. I was a new teacher. I was coming into it. Somebody had left all their chemicals there. Nothing was labeled, and it wasn't even locked. And they had summer school in that classroom. Just think about what could have happened if we're not taking care of that. Luckily, there was no liability, but that could have been a major, major problem during that summer before I got into that classroom. So when we think about what kind of signage should be in the classroom, signage about goggles, are they wearing? What about your gas shutoff signs? Evacuation routes, lots of times we have those, but for fire routes, do they need to be replaced for the new school year? Can we do the work orders? Do we have all the safety equipment? Are gas lines labeled? Can we read the label on the gas lines? These are things that we need to look at. So when we're talking about our safety operational procedure signs, we need to make sure that we have these in our classrooms and that they are in good shape. And if not, we need to be ordering some additional signs so that they can be posted. Some of those signs have a lot to do with our engineering controls and apparatus. And these are the equipments that help us stay safe. And so as we look at these, we want to make sure we have these that are appropriately in the different classrooms that we need them in. We don't need a safety shower in an elementary classroom, but we should have it in our high school classrooms for chemistry. Do we have running water? Do we have broken glass containers in the classrooms so that they can be taken care of? And and a goggle sanitizer? Lots of times at the elementary schools, they buy the goggles, but they don't sanitize the goggles. All you need is one sanitizer, and that can take care of that. So things to think of. When you're thinking about your engineering controls, your safety showers and eye wash stations, those need to be tested weekly. They need to be run through, and you need a log that you have done that. Because again, if there's an accident and somebody uses that and you did not log it, and there's bacteria in those pipes and it causes additional damage, then that's negligence. You don't want to be known to have that on your plate. So test everything, the fume hoods, the goggle sanitizing cabinets. And now when we're close to the end of the year, put the work orders in that need to be replaced. Fire extinguishers need to be checked on a monthly basis, and they need to be pressurized annually. Your fire department can also help you with this. If that's an area that you're like, I don't know where to go, well, check with them. They can help you. And then think about our storage facilities. It's one thing about thinking about our classrooms and keeping those clean and neat, but what about our storage facilities, which many times in some schools is a combination of multi departments that store things together. Hopefully at the high school, mainly, chemistry may have their own storage facility. But at middle school and elementary, they need to be neat. The aisles need to be clean. We need to make sure that, again, same thing, cords aren't falling off. You can walk in and your chemicals are organized carefully. I'm going to spend a little time about chemical safety. All chemicals should have their labels on them. If you cannot read the label on it, then Flynn Chem Inventory is a great place. You can put in the chemical name and you can then you can print off a new label. I have seen where there's been, you did an experiment and now you have all these little eyedroppers, glassware with chemicals in them, but there's no label on those. But they're put in the storage, they're locked up, but nobody knows what's actually in them. So we need to make sure everything is labeled correctly, along with the hazard information and how to store them. And when you look at your chemicals, this isn't like going and buying spices at the grocery store where they're in alphabetical order. Or if you're going to need fish oil and you're at Walgreens and you find, oh, well, there's the vitamin B and going through, it's not in alphabetical order. We need to store our chemicals based upon chemical class. Magnesium and nitric acid. Yeah, if you did it by alphabet, they'd be next to each other, but that could have an explosive reaction. So we need to make sure, based upon the label, it will say what chemical class they're in, and you store them according to their chemical class. We need double check to make sure that storage facility is locked and where you're putting your chemicals is locked. And the only people that have access is the authorized personnel to that. No students, maybe not even people from other departments, because you don't want them moving things around and putting you at a hazard. Again, we need to make sure we have those SDS, those safety data sheets. And the science and STEM department should have their own set, separate from the art class, separate from the CTE classes. Keep your own set and have a set then at the front office. So you actually need two sets. They can also be on a spreadsheet, but one set of the SDSs need to be at the front office, because if there is an accident, the fire personnel are going to come and ask for that. What are the chemicals that here? And then you need to have a set for your own department. So having two sets of those SDS, the safety data sheets that come through. And we need to think about, and at the end of the year, besides storing them, how are you going to remove chemicals? The removal of chemicals. And Johanna, I see you kind of shaking your head. This is a huge issue, and the byproducts, and it's costly, yes. So you need to be having, that is part of that total chemical hygiene plan. How are you going to remove them? Some districts utilize not just their for any of those removal, they work with their art department, the CTE department, and their transportation department. It may be the same company that can help remove all of them, but you do not want to just flush it down the sink or throw it in the garbage, because there are legal ramifications. And also think about how you're going to dispose of broken glassware and having those companies. So again, for safety purposes of disposable of materials, you want to look at those SDS sheets. How do you dispose of it? And then think about also, if you're not sure, oh my gosh, how do I do this? We don't have a company that we're contracted with. Then talk to your EPA office, talk to your fire marshal's office. Those people can help you to figure out ways how you can dispose of them safely and appropriately. Whew. I just gave you lots of information. I'm going to ask you to go into your alone zone, and I want you just to consider what key ideas do you want to share with others in your district or school to ensure that you close out the year safely, and what might be some more resources you want to learn about. So I'll give you a minute just to quietly think. Gently move us along so we can think about preparing for next year. Some things to consider. We need to have that chemical hygiene plan. Who is going to be that chemical hygiene officer? How are they going to be trained and equipped? Is it going to be the principal? Is it going to be the science chair? Is it going to be the STEM teacher? Is it the fifth grade lead teacher? Who is that? And are you going, you have time now during the summer to plan those emergency and accident procedures and the procedures for your staff and safety and students, and look at all of your equipment and making sure that it's safe and ready to go for the next year, taking care of all those work orders. Maybe you even want to consider having a fire extinguisher training for your teachers. Your local fire department would could come out and do that. I used to do that all the time and have all my fourth grade through high school teachers go through that training before school. Do you need to purchase more personal protective equipment? Do you need to have eye goggles? What kind? Do you need to get that chemical list, buy chemicals? And maybe you need to consider what chemicals do you not want on your property? What are those restricted chemicals? No matter what the teacher says, oh, this is going to be such a great demo, what don't you want? Because you want to consider when you're purchasing chemicals, they be used within 1 or 2 years? Can they be stored properly? Can they be disposed of easily? Do we have the proper PPE? Are we trained to use them? And does our budget allow for the disposal of the chemicals or the byproducts of the chemicals? That's really important to think about before you actually order chemicals during the summer. Also, if those eye washes and showers are not being used during the summer, then nobody's testing them and logging them. You need to be sure at the beginning of the school year that that you have them run and wait till they're clean, that they're clear water, and then continue to run them for another 3 to 5 minutes to make sure that bacteria and dirt is removed. And then make sure you keep the logging system of that. As you think about, many of you are experts in this field, what additional ideas surface or resources surface that you might want to share with others? And you can put that in the chat as we think about closing out the year and opening up next year. I know many of you have worked with districts a long time to have lots of resources as well. We're about to close our time. Please look at that digital resource that has lots of information, has also places where you can get your CHO officer trained. Oh, thank you, Johanna. Yes. Your insurance company are great resources as well. Yes. And just think about these 4 questions. What are the hazards that we may have in our STEM classrooms, our science classrooms? What's the worst thing that could go wrong? And then how am I going to deal with that? How will we as a team deal with that? And what are the prudent practices? What are the facilities? And what is the personal protective equipment necessary so that we don't have that hazard? So thank you so very much for coming. We have 2 more this school year. Hope to see you in May and in June and for our next free sessions. And if you can complete the survey, Rebecca put that into the link already into the chat. Um, Take time to complete and give us your feedback and what other topics you might be interested in. Thank you.